Okay, in the last tutorial we ended up with something like this, just a basic fish shape. We extruded the fin out. We looked at just creating the rough geometry to get this shape. So what we're going to look at this time is actually creating the fins, creating the eyes, adding geometry where we need it. First of all though, just a couple of things, and these are maybe a couple of problems you've come across as well. If I just go around this and just go around the back, I can see by looking at this that this line sort of goes off this center point, so these are also not kind of mirrored correctly. It's kind of warped that line. Now that can be okay stylistically if you're creating something where you're actually creating movement on it, but a lot of the time with something like a model that you're going to put a bone structure inside, it's nice to get that model as flat and symmetrical as possible. The center line is really important for doing a kind of symmetry on it, so actually making a copy of this side, having it flipped over the other side, and having it update based on what we do with this side. If we have a line that goes off, or any vertices that go off of this over the symmetry line, or not over the symmetry line but away from it, what we end up doing is getting gaps or problems with welding vertices in these areas. So just a few things to consider. Another thing is that I've just created this box and just started modelling out. So this is just in its own space. When again you're modelling something that's going to use symmetry, or you're modelling something that's going to have bones inside it, working along this grid line is really useful. So the center grid line. So right down here, if we just go into wireframe mode, just press 4. This center point of the grid, I've mentioned it before, is 0, 0, 0 on the X, Y and Z. Anything to this side of it, this is on the x-axis. Again, if you look down here, we can see that is a minus value. Anything this side is a plus value. Same with this one. If we go on the y value, we've got plus and minus on the y value upward, sorry, and then the z to and away from the camera, we have plus and minus values. But this is the center of everything. So with this in mind, we need to really keep the center of this object that we're modeling on this center line. We could try to eyeball it. We could just use a move tool. We can start moving this into position, but we want this to be quite precise. So we need a better way of doing it, and this is where snapping comes in. So up on this menu, in our polygons menu, we've got the snapping tools, and there's a lot of different features of these. If we want to snap something to a certain vertex point, we can do that. In this instance, we're actually going to be snapping to the grid. So if I click this icon on, we're on the move tool. The icon changes from a square to a circle, and then when I start dragging these, it's going to try to actually snap to these grid points. So I'm just going to go into the center one and leave it at that. Okay, and we can switch snap off. Another way to do that is to use the shortcut. So if this was out of position, what we can do is use the X key. So we'll press the X key down and hold it, and then drag this again. And when I release the X key, it goes back to the normal move tool. Okay, so we can use this icon, or we can use the shortcut. I'm going to press 5 to go back into my shaded view. So that's now along that 0 point, that 0 axis. So let's fix this center point right straight away. So if you just look at this again, I'm going to go into my 4-panel viewport. Just look in my top viewport. So all these are not in line with each other. In fact, if I just zoom into this, just press space, you can see that a bit clearer. We want these to be pretty flat to start with. And say we're going to be working a symmetrical model, so these two kind of sides need to be quite flat down this section here. This section, it's important that we get all these points along that 0 line. Okay, so that's the first thing we'll fix. So I'm going to go into my right-click menu, go into vertex. I'm going to drag around these middle points, and in fact what we can do, let's go to my perspective a second. I can click on one of these points and do the same that we can do with that, just shift double click, and we can get the full loop. Now this gives us a good chance to look at actual vertices coordinates. So each one of these points has a coordinate system. So it's got a point on the X, Y and Z. Okay. So what we're looking at for this is actually getting all of these at the 0 point on the x-axis. So we can actually do that quite simply. If we just go over in my channel box, make sure you're in this channel box, you might have to do a Control-A to bring that up. Click on CVs, click to show, and we have all the coordinates for each one of these vertices. So we've got our x, y, and our z. You can see there's different values in these. Okay. Now, if we're looking at this x1 in particular, if we just go down, you can see that most of these are at 0. But when I get down to the bottom, nearer some of these new vertices, you can see that we start getting values outside of 0. So to fix this, all we need to do is just type in, or we can just click on this. We can also drag down and choose selected ones. So I could just say select these bottom ones. I'm going to select all actually. And in all you need to do is just type 0, press enter. And that zeroes all of those points out. So they're now all in the same line. Okay? So let's just deselect those. So with these ones, we've got a different kind of problem. So let's go into our top viewport and let's just select these. So if I go into the CVs on these, so you think, okay, we can do the same kind of thing. We're going to have a positive value, we can set these to a certain value. So if you just go in and say, okay, these need to be at the position 3, it moves them all out by that that movement, that position. So that's just something to be aware of. It doesn't actually flatten them all out onto each other. So this kind of doesn't work in this instance. So just Z that to undo it. So there's a couple of ways around this. The first way is using the scale tool. So we're just going to the scale tool itself. When I start scaling these, again they're kind of scaling against their own positions. Let me just check the tool for this. I'm just going to double click on this and just set object. And let's just go into this. Let's just scale those out on this axis. So we can kind of flatten them out. Okay, we can bring those into line with each other. So let's do the other side. Let's grab these. Let's bring these flat to each other. Okay. Now that's an okay way of doing it. You know, if you don't want to be absolutely precise, it kind of works out. We may have to move these to match them across the right points on one axis or another. So you know, have these the same position. So if these are +3, these are -3, say, on this X position. But it's not exactly necessary. And also, if we're going into symmetry mode, we're going to fix that anyway. You know, we'll symmetry this side to this side, so it's fine. We can keep those coordinates. But we may want to flatten these out a bit more as well. So another way to do this, just drag select around these. Same thing, I'm going to use a scale tool, but this time what I'm going to do is press down J. What J does is snap this, so it's a percentage of 0 if we keep snapping it in. So as I snap into it, it snaps to a 0%, which is flattening this out. Let's do the same with the other side. Let's just drag these, press J, snap to that percentage. Okay. Now, I don't know if you notice on this, but when I press J down, it actually, in this toolbar, is switching on this discrete scale. Yeah, and we're going down to a step size. So just by doing that, we can do the same thing. We can snap those into those positions. Set that off, it's back off again. Okay. So let's just close this toolbar. Let's just zoom out of this. Go to my viewport, just deselect everything and go into object mode. And if you just click on this and click 3. Okay. So that's kind of what we've got. It's just a lot neater. We've got that flatter back end now. We've got everything along the centre line. So I'll leave it at this point, and in the next session we'll actually look at extruding the fins out, looking at areas like the eye.